The time trap. Iran's Dormammu strategy versus the USA. Flint West reporting. There's a scene in Doctor Strange that most people remember as a clever trick, but it's more than that. It's strategy. Dormammu is a cosmic god, infinitely powerful, existing outside of time, a being that cannot be beaten by a human in a straight fight. Doctor Strange knows this, so he doesn't try. Instead, he does something far more dangerous. He weaponizes time. He traps Dormammu in a loop. Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Dormammu kills him. Reset. Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Again, 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 thousands of times. Dormammu cannot escape it. He cannot destroy it. And eventually, the immortal god realizes something terrifying. The only way out is negotiation. Not because Strange won, but because Strange made the fight unbearable to continue. And that brings us to the present moment. Because what we may be witnessing in the Middle East is not a conventional military contest. It may be something closer to a strategic time trap. Section 1. The strategic principle. Throughout history, weaker powers have survived, and sometimes defeated, stronger ones by turning time itself into a weapon. Military historians have names for this. The Fabian strategy, named after Roman general Fabius Maximus, who faced the unstoppable Carthaginian commander Hannibal. Rome could not defeat Hannibal in open battle, so Fabius refused to fight him. He delayed, he harassed supply lines, he stretched the war out. Time slowly shifted the balance. The stronger army became stranded far from home. Attrition did the rest. This same logic reappears throughout history. Vietnam, Afghanistan, guerrilla wars everywhere. The doctrine goes by many names: asymmetric warfare, war of attrition, anti-access area denial. But the underlying principle remains unchanged. If you cannot defeat a superpower, make the war too expensive to continue. Not just militarily, economically, politically, psychologically. This is where the analogy to Dormammu becomes interesting. Because the loop is not about victory, the loop is about cost accumulation. Section 2. The ledger of war. Let's treat the situation like an accountant would. A balance sheet. Every day the war continues, new entries are added to the ledger, not opinions. Costs. Let's begin with the U.S. side of the balance sheet. U.S. ledger. The cost loop. Number 1. Oil shock. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of global oil supply. When it closes or becomes unstable, global oil prices spike. Oil pushing past $100 per barrel introduces an inflationary shock into the world economy. Every extra dollar per barrel ripples through transportation, manufacturing, food, and energy markets. This is not a military loss, it's an economic one. And economic losses compound. 2. Financial market stress. Equity markets begin reacting. The Nasdaq, a proxy for global risk appetite, starts sliding from recent highs. When markets fall, investor confidence erodes. Pension funds feel it. Institutional capital reacts. The political temperature rises. War begins to show up in retirement accounts. This content is brought to you by Bobby Gigs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. 3. Bond market pressure. Bond prices fall. Yields rise. Why? Because investors start pricing in inflation and fiscal risk. Higher yields mean higher borrowing costs for the U.S. government. And remember, wars are financed. Every basis point increase in yields turns the conflict into a more expensive proposition. 4. Direct war costs. Within weeks, the war ledger is already tens of billions deep. Emergency funding requests begin appearing in Congress. $15 billion. Then another $50 billion request. These numbers stack quickly, and unlike missiles, they don't explode once. They compound over time. 5. Political clock. Now add another variable, time. March 2026. Midterm elections approaching in November. 8 months. Every day the war continues. The conflict becomes a domestic political story. Campaign ads, economic pain, broken promises, and the political cost column begins filling rapidly. 6. Alliance fracturing. The coalition ledger begins to wobble. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni publicly states Italy does not want to enter the war. This matters because wars of this scale are rarely unilateral. They require coalitions. Once cracks appear in those alliances, the strategic picture changes. 7. NATO fragmentation signals. France begins negotiating separately for safe passage of its ships. Italy signals similar interests. Instead of a unified Western front, individual states begin pursuing national economic survival strategies. The coalition becomes less cohesive, another line item in the ledger. Now flip the page. Let's look at the other side. Section 3. Iran Ledger. Strategic leverage. Iran cannot defeat the United States in a conventional war, but it does not need to. Its objective may be far simpler: make the war last. Because every day the conflict continues, the U.S. ledger grows heavier. Iran's strategic advantages are not measured in aircraft carriers. They're measured in friction points. 1. Choke point leverage. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most valuable strategic levers in global trade. Disrupting it shakes the entire global energy system. Even partial disruption causes markets to panic. This creates global pressure for de-escalation. 2. Regional network pressure. Iran's strategic depth includes allied groups across the region. These networks increase the geographic surface area of the conflict. Instead of one battlefield, the war becomes several. Each additional front adds complexity and cost. 3. Negotiation positioning. Iran signals 3 demands: recognition, security guarantees, reparations. The specifics are less important than the posture, because demands like this only appear when a state believes it has negotiating leverage. Section 4. The loop. Now step back and look at the structure. This is where the Doctor Strange metaphor becomes powerful. Dormammu could destroy Strange instantly, but he could not escape the loop. Similarly, the United States possesses overwhelming military capability. But if the conflict becomes an endless cost cycle, victory becomes difficult to define. And that is the true nature of the time trap. Not defeat, not victory, but strategic exhaustion. Section 5. The historical pattern. This is not new. It is the Fabian strategy. It is asymmetric warfare. It is the war of attrition. It is anti-access area denial. All versions of the same ancient principle. The stronger power seeks decisive battle. The weaker power seeks endless war. Because endless war changes the scoreboard. The battlefield shifts from military power to economic endurance, from firepower to political patience. And once the battlefield becomes time itself, the rules of power begin to invert. Section 6. The Strange Doctrine. Dr. Strange never defeated Dormammu. He forced him to bargain, by making the fight impossible to end. That is the essence of the strategy. And if the metaphor holds, then the question for Washington is no longer simply, can the U.S. win the war? The question becomes far more uncomfortable. How long can the loop continue before the ledger demands negotiation? Because the longer the loop runs, the heavier the balance sheet becomes. And somewhere in that accumulating ledger, a superpower may eventually find itself saying the same words Dormammu did. Enough. Let's bargain. Flint West signing off.